So the Muslim Student Association, this is something that is in hundreds of schools across North America, says it condemns all violence and says violent extremist ideology perverts the teachings and examples of the Prophet. So they've been very vocal about extremism, about these terrorist attacks. That's supposed to be good, right? Well, 11 apparently of the highest profile jihadi terrorists and terror suspects has been tied to this organization. The allegation, of course, surfacing as we hear of 3 men charged in Ottawa earlier this week on terror-related offenses. Jonathan Halevi joining us now to talk a little bit about smoke and mirrors. So the information is coming out just after we hear about these terror charges linked to John McGuire, who we suspect has gone over to Syria and fought in dying, Qatar Khalib, and also Pushtari, who is now in jail.
Yes, they were all connected to this organization, and I want to say to refer to what they say in response to the involvement of some terrorists in the ranks of the MSA. I've been watching the MSA in Canada during the last few years, and
I should say they've been around for a long time. It's not a new organization. It's been in at least since the 60s.
Not at all, but I think they should explain why. The MSA in some Canadian universities invite as the guest speakers radical imams from Canada or from outside Canada.
Because they probably don't consider them radical.
So maybe. So that contradicts what they're saying about the views about radicalism. I give an example. Abdurrahman Green from Britain. He was invited by MSA to some universities as a guest speaker, and another one is another radical imam from Britain. He also was invited, in this case, to Algonquin College in Ottawa, and he has a very radical views with regard to homosexuals, with regard to apostates, etc., and the implementation of the Sharia law in the very strict way.
Right, because if you look at how this organization is set up, it's marketed as promoting and serving tolerance and understanding of the Islamic faith. So for me on the outside, or if I were a media journalist, for many of them who are looking up, they'll say, okay, this is what they are and this is who they are. They promote tolerance in the Islamic faith. But you look at the red flags, because in New York, some of the associations back in 2007, they linked that there were growing trends of radicalization, which has now permeated the MSA, used for the development of radicalization and recruitings. And so this organization, which has been around for at least 30 years throughout North America, they come out and say, we our tolerance is, faith and tolerance, but if you dig deeper, we're starting to see some cracks emerge.
I give a few examples from Alberta, from the University of Alberta. They say very clearly, yes, we support the Islamic law, the Sharia, etc. And then they post on their Facebook page a hadith, is a tradition narrated about what they call Prophet Muhammad, in which he ordered the stoning to death of a woman who confessed of adultery.
This is the Calgary Facebook page, correct?
Yes, at the Muslim Student Association of the University of Alberta, of Calgary, sorry. And in another case, we see the activity of the MSA in the University of Alberta in support of Omar Khader. For them, Omar Khader, they are saying very clearly, he's an innocent, and they also organized activity in support of him. And they said that they're going to make him feel in the university like at home.
Sure.
So all of these things, I think, all connected, and they have to explain their views in light of them.
Right, but there are those that don't see Omar Khader as anything but a child soldier. They don't see him as a terrorist. They see him as a sympathetic character. And I think others on the other side would argue back and say, yes, but he's a guy that's never denounced terror. He was almost 16 years old. He was hardly a child soldier. But nonetheless, you're pointing out this organization, which I think to many in the mainstream would be an organization that they should be able to look to for balance, and clearly there's an issue here because of the jihadists that have been linked to it. These are not small players.
Yes, you have to differentiate between two levels. One is those who are suspect of involvement in terrorism, and the second one is the ideological level. if we take the imams, the radical imams who were invited to the MSA in Canadian campuses, they may supply the ideological background to others. And this is the most important thing, because they can create others who sympathize with radical organizations. It can be the Muslim Brotherhood, Hizb ut-Tahrir, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, etc. So if Abdul Rahman Green, the radical imam,
sure,
or the other imam from Britain, al-Sahabi, they were here, and they are radical. And the first one was banned. His interest was banned to Australia because of his view. An investigation was launched in Britain about his radical organization. And this, I think, should be a red flag.
Well, it should. But again, if you don't do the investigative work, and there are a lot of media around that just simply take the press release and read it and say, okay, well, this organization preaches tolerance, that's what the people are going to be told at home as they sit and watch the news. So when a group like the Muslim Student Association comes out and says, we denounce terror, we do not support this, that narrative becomes Muslim groups are speaking out against radicalization. But when you do basic digging, as we're finding out in Montreal, in Alberta, now with this group, we're finding that there are allegations that there is radicalization taking place. So it's very disingenuous, and it's feeding a bigger problem. I mean, Omar Khadr's father, Ahmed, was a member of this Muslim association, the same Ottawa Muslim Student Association in Ottawa that is linked to this investigation.
Yes, and you see that all this information comes to the same point of the ideology, the radical ideology, the connection to the Muslim Brotherhood ideology, and that can feed the next generations. And this is really, I think, troubling about what's happening in the campuses, and I can see it.
You can see it, though, but Jonathan, who else is investigating it? Because you have looked into it, Tariq Fatah has looked into it, you've raised the red flags, Mark Labouie has looked into it, you guys know about it. But how come no one else knows about it?
I think that it's an issue that's relevant to the decision to deal with the problem head on. And in some cases, people, politicians and others, do not want to deal with that because there are many consequences in dealing with that. And I think that's why, for them, it's better to ignore the issue. But it's not going to be, it cannot be overlooked for a long time.
No, it can't. And so now it's been brought to light. Where does this go from now? Because those who are involved with the association, and in no way am I saying that every member of the Muslim Student Association are radicalized. I'm not saying that. Mm-hmm. But clearly there is this expressed shock by members of the association. Is it going to be investigated more thoroughly?
In my own investigation, I found that some members, former members of MSA, were sympathizers with ISIS, for example, in Canada. So it's if you look into, if you go and do research, you'll find more and more troubling information about this organization. And I think it's very important to deal with the fact as it is, and to be honest with the information, to say to the Canadian public, we have problem with radical Islam.
Right.
We don't have problem. Canada don't have problem with the Muslim community, but those elements that they are not mentally ill. They are not. There is a problem. There is an ideological background to those common ideological background that feeds the extremist. And if we want to stop it, we have to deal with the root causes of this radicalism. Right,
the root causes. But if you don't think there's a root cause, if you're a Muslim with this organization and you don't see the John Maguires or the other people that have been arrested as a problem, if you share their views, then clearly you don't think you're radical. I mean, that's the problem, is that they don't think there's anything wrong with this, and so therefore they defend it.
It's not a question just of we against them.
Yeah.
We can find the same voices from the Muslim community, from mainstream imams, who are saying the same message, that radicalism that came from imams from Saudi Arabia, from the Gulf states, the Wahhabis, the Salafis, they also warn of this ideology. We have to listen to them, to the mainstream imam from the Muslim community, and to cooperate with them in order to deal with the problem.
Right. All right. So I know you're on Ezra Levant's show, and I know that you've got some exclusive information of more radicalization that you're finding. I won't say what it is, but it's certainly worth tuning in, and we'll, of course, continue following it because you keep breaking these stories. Brian Daly in Montreal, Mark Labouie, you guys are breaking these stories, and I'm glad that you're bringing them to light. and I'll be interested to hear what you thought.